Hi everyone. Very excited to have these lovely ladies joining me for our Valentine's Day date. All associated authors of Global Girls Online Book Club. So really excited to have you with me. Maybe we'll start off by introducing ourselves. Please. Mary Lou, would you like to go first?
Sure, I'm Mary Lou Stevens. I write historical foodie fiction set in Tasmania. It's quite the niche. I think I'm the only one in it. And my latest book, The Jam Maker, has just been released, so I'm whizzing around the country, well, parts of it, on book tour. And my first novel was published when I was 60 years old. So I'm here to say it doesn't matter what age you are. Just keep working and persevering, and yeah.
And I have to say, I'm surprised you say that because you certainly don't look 60.
I'm 64 now. My third novel just come out. Yep, 64. There's a song about that, I'm sure. And what about you, Susan? How about you introduce yourself?
Hi guys, Susan Mackey. I released my first book in early 2020, and so 5 years in, I'm up to book 9 has just come out. I'm not sure if you can see that. In the Barrington series, I'm writing book 10 as we speak, and I have just gone full-time, or just quit my day job at the end of last year, and I'm now full-time writing. God knows,
how exciting.
Bread and water, and renting out the back part of my study, but let's give it a go.
Did you say, Susan, you've had released 10 books in 5 years?
Not 9, yeah. So this one
amazing.
actually releases. So when I say that, I've got 5 full-size books, like 80,000 odd words. I think the smallest is 67,000. I've got 3 novellas of about 34,000. And then one little guy, and this is a bit of a success story, an accidental success story. This little guy, Coffee is My Calling, it's 12,000 words, and I wrote it as a little newsletter, magnet to build my newsletter list at the end of 2023. And I've got all these diehard paperback readers, and I was giving it away in my newsletter, building it up. All these diehard paperback readers said, no, but we need a paperback. And like, seriously, this is a 6x8. This is Coffee is My Calling. Like, it's tiny. It's the littlest thing. More than 10,000 copies of this have actually been sold.
Wow. Congratulations.
An accidental success story. And it's just a little prequel to the series. And honestly, it's definitely not my best book, but what the hell? I'll go with it.
And hi, Nikki and Kirsty. Good to see you're here.
Hello.
Hello.
We're just going around introducing ourselves, so I don't know if you want to be next.
Sure. Sure. I'm Nikki Perry, and Kirsty Roby is my sister, and we co-write romantic comedies, and we live in New Zealand.
Thanks for staying up late to join us.
That's all right. We were already up talking and plotting a book, so
Perfect timing.
I didn't realise you were sisters, actually, and I looked at your both, you never know where anybody is on Zoom, but you were both at the bottom of the screen, and I thought, these women look similar. So that's nice. That's
we
lovely.
get that a lot, yes.
How long
Do you
have you
write?
guys...
Oh, sorry, Susan. Do you write independently as well, or are all your books written together?
No, we're codependent.
Yeah, we're very codependent. We've never published anything separately.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
So what's your trick? Do you both do you take a character each? How do you break up a book when you're writing it together?
We've got really similar writing styles, so we did start off doing that. The first book that we wrote had 2 main characters, and started off writing one each. But we found we were going in and editing each other's work anyway and going, I didn't like that bit, so I just changed it. So kind of became a bit of a waste of time doing that. And then we decided we'd write a book with one main character just to see whether we could do that. And that worked just as well. So yeah, now we just do whatever. Yeah.
And how many books do you have out?
We've got 6 at the moment and another one coming out in September.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then we've got a couple of kids' books coming out too this year, so I'm studying.
Brilliant.
And I think Pam and Pem, we still haven't quite got to you yet, have we?
And me.
Oh, and Sarah, sorry.
Sarah.
I'm losing track of my...
You go first, Sarah.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm Sarah Edgehill, and I had my first book published in September 21, and my 7th has just come out 2 days ago. And I write contemporary fiction. It's contemporary book club fiction, emotional domestic dramas. Most of them, and a couple of them, have been much lighter with a sort of rom-com element. I don't like the rom-com tag as such, but that, unfortunately, that sort of describes them. So yeah, so that's me, and hopefully working on another one which might come out towards the end of this year if everything goes to plan.
And you're located somewhere a bit colder than where most of us
Yes.
are.
As you can see, I am located in the UK, in the Cotswolds, which today is
lovely.
grim. Well, it's not lovely today. It can be absolutely glorious, but today I'd rather be where any of you are.
I live in the Southern Highlands, and I actually live in a place called Exeter, and I think it's named Exeter for a reason, because it is like the Exeter of the UK. So that's why I have warm pajamas on. I'm Penelope Janu, and I write, have written rom-com, but I write nowadays, I've had 9 novels published by HQ HarperCollins, and rural fiction, rural romance. So Summerfield Sadler is my most recent one. Yeah, and it's lovely to be here, and happy Valentine's Day to everyone.
Yes.
Well, that just leaves me, I think, doesn't it? I'm Pamela Cook. I write women's fiction with rural elements. Well, most of them are set in rural locations, and romantic elements. Stories about women at turning points, really, in their lives. And I'm really interested in kind of the psychology of how people got to be who they are, and how things from our past affect us now and into the future. And also the resilience of women, and women, you know, just managing to survive some really difficult situations. My books can sometimes have, contain a bit of trauma and a little bit of kind of that whole psychological aspect of character development, I suppose. But there's always a hopeful ending. So, and I live in the Illawarra in New South Wales, on the coast just north of Wollongong, on a property. And you might have noticed on the photo that Jackie put up, a photo of me and my horse. So I'm an avid horse rider and horse lover.
Yeah, I love your photo with the horse. That's why I chose that one. Yeah.
I love that picture.
Yeah. And thanks everyone for joining us. Happy Valentine's Day. And we've got quite a few people watching. So just wanted to say to those people watching, please type in any questions you might have for the authors in comments, and I can read them out. We're here really to talk romance, so looking forward to people's romance questions. I might start off by asking a question of the authors. Could you tell us what your most romantic Valentine's Day that you can think can be? It doesn't have to be one that actually happened. It could be your dream Valentine's Day. I'd really like to hear.
I tend to think of I think of Valentine's Day a little bit like Mother's Day, in that, like, it's how you treat it every day of the year, or how you treat your mum or your loved one or your auntie or your niece or whatever it might be. So Valentine's Day, I mean, for me, in the books that I write, I like to think that any day could be a Valentine's Day, in that a thoughtful comment or gesture, or just good sex, whatever it might be for you, would work. So every day is Valentine. Every day has the potential to be Valentine's Day. But I think it is a really nice thing that we, celebrate to some extent, just that we acknowledge then that this is important, this relationship between people who care about each other and love each other. So that's what it is to me.
You reminded me of the song there, Pan, My Funny Valentine, which is a beautiful song and ends with each day is Valentine's Day.
Yes.
Yeah, it's an old jazz standard. It's just gorgeous.
I think that's a sentiment.
Yeah, my ideal Valentine's Day, because I've never had one, would definitely involve a box of very expensive chocolates, some roses, preferably bought and not stolen from someone's garden, and a fabulous dinner, and probably a ride on a Ferris wheel.
I love that. Well, I've got a real one. I started dating bloke in my life nearly 20 years ago, about a year after the breakup of quite a nasty breakup of my marriage, and he hadn't noticed. We'd been seeing each other for months, just dating. I had 2 teenage daughters at home, not living together, all of that. And I had some quite nice jewelry, when I started seeing him, from my marriage. And at one point, I had to sell the jewelry to pay my daughter's school fees. And I was so embarrassed about it. And I just, obviously I wasn't wearing the jewelry, had to sell it, mostly a lovely diamond ring. And it was Valentine's Day and we went to dinner and I wasn't expecting anything. We really hadn't been seeing each other, not even quite a year. And when we went back to the car, he got all funny and got in the car, then he got out of the car and he got in the car and it was all, and I didn't know what was going on. And then he reached into the console and he pulled out a little present. And it was actually, I'm wearing it. It was this little diamond ring that I'm wearing. And I looked at it and I think my eyes rolled back in my head because I thought, oh my gosh, is he proposing? Because that's a no. And we're still not married. I just wouldn't do that. And he's gone, it's a dress ring. It's a dress ring. But notice that you're not wearing your beautiful rings anymore. And I asked one of the girls, I'd said, I just put them away because my husband gave them to me because I was embarrassed. But one of my daughters dumped me in it and said, oh, Mummy had to sell them to pay the school fee. And he bought me this ring. And honestly, he's bought me a lot of jewelry over the years, but I think that very first ring, it was just such a nice gesture. But he did get a bit like when I looked like, are you proposing? He was like, it's a dress ring. It's a dress ring.
And you're still with him now.
Oh, that's a lovely story.
Gorgeous.
Made me cry at the time.
Yeah, I would. It's making me a bit teary now. That's lovely.
Well, I'll jump in. We don't really celebrate Valentine's Day, probably for the reason that you were saying, Pen. We kind of feel like, not that every day is perfect, but, a little bit of that kind of whole commercialism, I guess, of the idea. But if I were to kind of think of a perfect Valentine's Day, it would probably be in Paris. Would probably involve a really nice bottle of champagne, some nice chocolates, bit of a walk along the river, visiting a bookshop, and just generally soaking up the atmosphere, walking. Yeah.
Nice.
And a Ferris wheel.
No Ferris wheel. Maybe a carousel though. There's a very nice carousel at Montmartre, so maybe I'd hop on that and pretend they were real horses.
Lovely. But Paola, I know your beautiful husband, Pamela, but he probably wouldn't go into the bookshop necessarily, would he?
Although he is very happy for me to frequent bookshops when we travel. So, we've been into Shakespeare & Co. a few times when we have been to Paris. And I have to say it wasn't Valentine's Day, but on our 30th wedding anniversary, he did surprise me with a trip to Paris that I didn't know we were going on for our anniversary. Wow. So I got that kind of at Christmas, and then our anniversary was the 7th of January. So that was pretty romantic.
Yeah, that's lovely. A little bit of hand holding, there's nothing nicer than walking by the river and having a little bit of hand holding. It's just, I don't know, it's just that skin on skin. It's nice.
I've got a question from someone watching. So Belinda, she wonders what everyone's favourite trope is to write.
I love a grumpy sunshine myself. That's my favourite.
Mine is Enemies to Lovers. It's my favourite to read, and I don't really write straight romance, but I did write a novella last year for a Christmas anthology that I was part of, and Penelope is in as well. And I had a lot of fun writing a kind of Enemies to Lovers for that novella. It was good fun. Yeah.
I'm going to say the same, Pam. I am writing an Enemies to Lovers right now for next year's novel. And it is such fun because of the banter.
Yeah, the banter is the best. And just the tension that you can build up, it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's certainly my favourite. I think I've been pretty consistent in that. And there can be misunderstandings or whatever else it is, but it gives you a wonderful way to resolve issues between the characters, I suppose. And
No, I agree with that as well. And I also quite like the second chance, second time around. I think you can often mix so many different tropes in together, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I quite like the second time around, but Kirsty doesn't, so we can never write that.
Not never. You just have to do it all.
How about you, Susan? You kind of mix it up a bit then, don't you?
I do mix it up a little bit. I basically write small town, and the first one was Enemies to Lovers, and then over the series I've developed like these really strong female friendships that kind of carry the stories through. But the thing I like about my women characters, and it's probably what I told my two daughters when we were on our own for a period of time and as they were growing up, I don't like my women to be waiting around for someone to come and save them in their white car, their white horse, or their white anything. My women can save themselves, and they'll bloody well save him too if he needs it. But, it's about dealing with their own crap and making themselves ready to have someone in their lives. Sometimes they don't always know that, but my women are often in small business. They're strong and independent. They're smart. They pivot. I just like slightly feisty. Yeah, mate. Yeah, I really like you. I fancy you, but hey, I've just got to go do this business thing first. So just wait one moment. I don't know. I like my girls to have a bit of control.
Yeah, sounds good.
And Kim says she's really loving your stories, and I have to agree with her. She wonders if anyone's written a book with Valentine's Day in it.
No, we all have to have a think now.
Yeah.
We have.
No, maybe it's a challenge for you. I've got a question. What sort of romance do you like having in your books, and then maybe also reading when you're reading romance? Do you like The Closed Door, hot and steamy, or a little bit in between?
Well, I got to say, with this latest book that's just come out, The Jam Maker, there is a bit of sex in it. But what I tend to do is what I always do is I do 3 drafts and then I send it to my early readers. And one of them said she's a bit obsessed with sex. What's going on? Anyway, I wrote an email to my publisher and I went, there's quite a bit of sex in this book. And she said, oh, that's funny. She said, I reckon it's Dorothy, who was one of the main characters in The Chocolate Factory. She didn't get any. So Harriet is getting it all.
I've read your book, Mary Lou, as you know, and I really liked the way, in the time that your book is set, being sort of sexually aware or even knowing where all the good spots are would be uncommon. And the fact that she's kind of found that, and I'm like, more power to you girls, because it's that whole time of women starting to evolve and get the vote and do all those sorts of things. And I do think it was a really important part of your book that she did take a little bit of control, and that she also knew that she wasn't getting good sex. And I just think I actually think it was a really important part of the book. I'm glad you left it in.
There isn't as much sex in it now as there was.
Okay.
There was quite a bit of unsuccessful sex as well, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, yes. There's a lot of unsuccessful sex before she finally got it wrong, found someone who'd let her get it right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And interesting that, Susan, you said she found that spot. It was quite by accident the first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Women certainly didn't do that kind of thing back then.
No. And even without giving any spoilers away, the way she conceived was not normal for the time.
No.
And I just loved that banter between her and I can't think of her
Ruth.
Yeah. Her and Ruth being so much kind of coarser and telling it how it was. And I loved that. I loved that, women. I think that was really clever.
Great.
Is that really good fun to write, Mary Lou?
I do absolutely love the Jam Maker, and I love Ruth. Ruth is just a down to earth, as Susan said. She's just say it as it is, plain speaking, and loyal to the hilt, because they're together for a long time. This book covers a lot of ground from 1874 to 1926, so they're together for most of it. And I loved writing this book. And what took me by surprise when it came time to edit it, I was, I hadn't done anything with it for a couple of months, waiting for the edits to come through. And when I read it, I went, wow, what happens next?
That's always a good sign.
And I emailed my publisher and said, this is bizarre. I've never had this before. I'm kind of going, oh, gosh. But I used to be a singer-songwriter, and sometimes I would write a song and I'd go, where did that come from? And I'd actually write that. The Jam Maker is a little bit like that. It's just like, wow, okay. Yeah, this book is great, and I need to find out what happens next. Quite odd, but delicious. Yeah.
Fabulous book, Mary Lou. Absolutely loved it.
Thank you. What about you, Pam? Are you closed door?
I'm kind of part open. I wouldn't say it's closed. I do have sex scenes in my books if that's the way the story goes, it's got to be part of the woman's journey in that story type thing. And it often is, like I said, I'm kind of romantic elements. And they're usually kind of a couple of pages long maybe, but I do like to leave, put enough in there to set the scene, but then leave some stuff for the reader's imagination as well. Because I'm a big fan of Emily Henry, and she does have some, no, I wouldn't say super raunchy, but they're definitely some, quite open door sex scenes in there, or couch, bookshop, wherever. And I love reading different ways that authors get those scenes into the book, because there's so many different angles that you can take. But I just think for me, it's all about the development of the character and how that emotional kind of journey that the character's on, is mirrored in that relationship, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a bit door half open. Some of my books have a little bit more than others because, like Pamela says, it depends on the character's journey. Like if these characters, one couple that were a little bit older, that wouldn't, when I say a little bit older, in their 40s, they wouldn't necessarily be rushing in on a first date and whatever, and a bit, think it through a little bit more. And one woman who, in one of the novellas, who'd been through some trauma, that it took her a long time to trust. So really at the end of that novella, there was a little bit of passion, but there was no sex. It was kind of left on, after you turn the page, that there would be, but it took her a long time to get to that point because of what she'd been through. And whereas others in my most recent book, it's a little bit hot and steamy. They're a younger couple, and that's what they do. So but I don't get it right into like naming all the body bits and being very, very graphic. I kind of because I don't like reading stuff that's really graphic personally. So I'm kind of open door, but not steamy, but it's more emotional than this bit goes in that bit.
I'm just thinking of all the Victorian slang I used in the Jam Maker and all the very inventive names they have for body parts.
Yeah. That was cute. That was really cute.
What about you, Sarah? Where do you fall on the spectrum?
probably more towards closed door, but then the relationships that I've actually written about have been, as you were saying, Susan, between older people who were coming together after, you know, a long time on their own, or different, a couple of my characters were divorced. One had an ex-partner who was causing all sorts of issues when she got together with her neighbour, as it happened. And I think I completely agree. It's, for me, it's more about the emotional journey. And often, you know, by the end of the book, the relationship probably hasn't gone very far. It's obviously going to happen, but it's more establishing the relationship between the characters as part of, there's always so many other issues going on, as there are in all our books. It's not just about the relationship. So it's sort of bringing all of that together. But for that reason, probably quite closed door.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that all of you are saying it, you know, it depends on the journey of the characters. Like in real life, when you think about those characters, would they do that thing? And if they wouldn't, then you can't kind of make them do it. I don't know, it just wouldn't work as a reader, as a really broad reader. That just wouldn't work for me if you had people doing it that I'm like, I don't think they're there yet, you know, and then they were.
And Nikki
particularly, I
and
think, too,
Kirsty,
'cause,
what
you know,
about, sorry?
Oh no, I was just going to say,
What about
particularly
your
because
books?
we write men who are respectful, are honest, are deserving of trust, generally. And so then that type of a man, if it's a male-woman relationship, you know, you wouldn't, it has to be the right time for both characters, I think, for us to be comfortable with, you know, with really actively consensual sex, and sex that's, you know, is good for both parties. I think that's something wonderful that, you know, the romance genre does, much more so than any other genre, really. I think we're all very sensitive to that because of the characters that we write and the way we think that they would behave. And that's what makes it romance, isn't it? That's what gives it that, you know, happy or after ending.
Actually, my bloke's not a big reader, and he reads all of my books. And honestly, he's read like 3 Grishams in John Grishams in all the time I've known him, and then he reads my books because I think he thinks he's going to be in it. So he has to, and it takes him ages and ages. And I remember the very first book, you know, there was a point where there was a bit of sexy time, and he was sitting up in bed at night with his glasses on the end of his nose, kind of reading his book. And I walked in one night, and he's looked at me over the top of his glasses, and he's gone, "Utter filth, Susan, utter filth." I know exactly where you are. And then in the current book, he kept going on, you know, at breakfast the next morning after he'd read a bit of the book, and he's going, "Oh, my jeans are a bit tight. My jeans are feeling uncomfortable." And I'm going, "Oh, shut up."
That's a good sign, though, isn't it? You've moved him in every way.
Like that Seinfeld episode, you know, I think it moved. But anyway. Too funny.
Well,
Nikki and I don't do any scenes, do we?
I was going to ask, that was my next question. Yes.
Yeah, and so I think when you're sisters, it's a little bit weird writing sex scenes and reading them. You know, I don't want to read anything Nikki's written that's a sex scene. She doesn't want to read anything I've written, so we just close the door.
You close the door, okay.
Make it easier.
Often with our characters, sometimes the sex happens, it does happen, but it happens in like maybe a funny situation or a funny circumstance, funny place. So we kind of put that in there. We put a bit of humour so that almost so that you don't notice that this.
It's very implied too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's happened off the page.
Right. Yeah.
Subliminal sex, okay.
And I will say, in the Chocolate Factory, there is no sex. There's no sex at all. But what I was trying to achieve, especially with Dorothy, there are 2 main characters, but Dorothy is the older of the 2. And I don't know if anyone's seen Age of Innocence, but there is a scene in that movie where Daniel Day-Lewis and Michelle Pfeiffer are in a carriage. It's historical. And he just unbuttons her glove. And he does it really slowly, and there's sexual tension between them is enormous. And he just unbuttons her glove, and then he kisses her wrist. And that's it.
That's all you need.
And
That's all you need, yeah.
And that's what I was aiming for with the relationship between Dorothy and Thomas.
And that's with, you know, in the BBC production of Pride and Prejudice, of course, it's where Mr. Darcy holds out his hand. Elizabeth has to shake his hand to get up into the carriage. And that's just a touch of a hand. And that's all it takes in that particular context, which is fabulous. I mean, with contemporary, yeah, there can be more than that. But I think that's what we all kind of aim for in a way, that there's just something between the characters that shows that there's this extra element of passion, I guess, between them.
Isn't it?
But it can be a touch of a hand. That could be all that it takes.
Coming out of the pond, you know. But
Oh yeah.
Yes, that's right.
And yeah, it's interesting you say that. That leads to another question I was thinking about. Research for your romance, is it through experiences you might have had, dreams you might have had, movies you might have watched, or do you actually try things out to see how they would work?
I've tried one thing out. I've said this publicly before. Jackie might have heard it. Well, probably other things, but you know what I mean. Like just generally, what's right between the characters is what they do, and I think that's sometimes why men can be threatened by, you know, women, their wives or their partners reading romance, because then often an honest, trustful, respectful relationship involves really good sex. You know, because and that's a really wonderful thing. But no, the only thing I've done, and that was my first novel, In the Deep End. I wrote this whole book, and this woman was very afraid of going underwater in the ocean. And so there was a kiss underwater. And so I'd written that. The book had actually been accepted by my publisher, and it was sort of going to edits. And I'd never kissed anybody underwater. And so this is when I have 6 children. My youngest child had just finished the HSC, so we're on a lovely family holiday with everybody. And I said to Pete, well, you know, can we just try that? You know, and he was very in it. And so then we said, can you kiss underwater? And you actually can, in my experience. So anyway, but that's it from me, Jackie. That's all you're going to get.
Yes, well, as I said, in the Chocolate Factory, there's no sex. And I, you know, big swathes of my life, that's been pretty much it.
Writing from experience, Mary Lou.
But yeah, I'm in the latest one. Yeah, I've done the successful sex scenes, certainly not for the book, but I certainly have done them. But thankfully not the unsuccessful sex scenes.
Oh, sorry, Pamela.
Oh, that's okay. No, I was just going to, it doesn't exactly answer the question. I mean, I think most of mine are in my imagination. Yeah. That's where they come from. But just a very kind of funny quick story with my first book, Blackwater Lake, when the first edition came out in 2012. And at that time I was driving a combi. You know, we draw on things in our own life. We had horses, we rode, you know, my daughters and I used to ride at a agistment place. And the character, there is a sex scene in the kitchen. Well, it starts in the kitchen and then moves to the bedroom in that book. And at the time, my daughters were in Pony Club, and one of them went to a Pony Club camp, and I wasn't there, but it was big, you know, excitement. A lot of people then knew me, and I had the book out and everything. And a number of people were kind of sitting around the campfire, you know, reading the book kind of at the same time while Georgia was there. And of course, a couple of them got up to this sex scene, and she just was absolutely mortified. Like, you know, they were reading it out loud, and it's like, oh, your mum drives the combi, and like some of their mothers were there and they were in on it as well. And she just came home and she said, Mum, never write a scene like that.
How old was your daughter at the time?
She would have been, well, funnily enough, she is now 29 and pregnant with her first child. She would have been, it was 12 years ago, so she would have been 17. Yeah, I was not popular.
I find, you know, while I'm writing, I'm sort of in each character's head, if that makes sense. And and sometimes I have to say to the character, because I'm just, you know, like typing away. And I have to say to them, no, it's too soon, button up. You know, sometimes they just start doing stuff and I'm kind of watching the words come up and no, I've got to, but good action, guys. Let's just cut that and put it aside for later. But no, we're not doing that yet. Sometimes, I don't know, the character, everything comes from experience, doesn't it? And, you know, I'm just over 60 and I've lived and had a couple of big relationships and all of that. But I'd have to say there's lots of scenes that I put in my books that I've never experienced. It's just pure imagination and what you think that person in that situation, how they might react. And I don't know, you know, we've all read a lot. I don't know where it comes from, but to me, it sort of comes from the characters. Sometimes the characters just drive it because they come alive as I'm writing them.
Yeah, and I think some of it is, because we're all, you know, we're all big readers as well. And so then things that we've read over the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, you know, whatever years, some things have really resonated with us. You know, what is a memorable scene between two characters? So it's normally we care about the characters and then we might care about the fact that they've had, you know, an intimate situation, whatever it might be. And that's wonderful because we can kind of bring that into our own writing of our own characters, I imagine. So, sorry, Sarah.
You don't necessarily know, Penelope, that all of that stuff that you've read is still sort of in the back part of your brain there somewhere, and you draw on that. I mean, I don't know that it's even a conscious thing, really.
No, I agree.
I'll be quiet now.
Sarah, what were you going to throw in there?
No. I was just agreeing with the fact that whatever you're writing, when you're writing it, you are completely living in it, and you take on that character in so many ways. You know, when you go off, you make a cup of coffee, you put the vacuum around you, you're driving to pick up a child or something, and you're almost thinking like that person. So I was just really agreeing with Susan. Sometimes they behave in a way that you don't quite expect when you start out writing. And I used to think that was ridiculous. I read authors talking about things like that. Oh, the characters decided what they were going to do. And I thought, that's, of course not, you decide, you're the author. But there is an element of that, definitely. And that also, you're drawing on your own experience, you're drawing on films, you're drawing on observation. You know, I'm sure we all, as writers, every single thing you see during the day, whether you're in a supermarket or a cafe or talking to a friend, it's going in up there. And at some stage, it might be brought out again in a book.
And I think sometimes dialogue, you know, when you say that, sometimes dialogue is the things that you wish you'd said that you didn't say, you know, in that argument or in that bit of sexy banter or whatever it was, and you didn't say it, but you wish you had. You'd thought about it afterwards, and sometimes that comes out of characters, you know. Damn, I wish I'd said that, but it sounds really good in my book, you know.
Yeah, they're much more articulate than we are in real life.
Oh, yeah, much more. No,
well, they have time to think about what to say, don't they? Because we're thinking about what they could say, and you go, oh, that would be a good line. But of course, in reality, you don't think about that until, you know, 3 hours later when you're at home and you think,
Exactly.
And I've got a good question from Sina. She wonders if you have a favourite place that you find romantic. I like that question.
We're all thinking.
I'm
Is it
interested
Paris?
in the writers
Is it
who,
Paris for
the
you,
closed
Pam?
door. With the closed door, is it always got to be like in a bedroom or something? Can you close the door in the kitchen, or can you close the stable door? Like, where do you close the door?
you could close any door at all. You can close the barn door, you can close any door at all.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's interesting.
I think being closed door, the more interesting the place, the better. Sometimes it's better not to be a bedroom because it can be a bit more unexpected then. That you know
Yeah, we've had a few kitchen counters and hot tubs and things where there isn't a door to close, but it's
a metaphorical door.
And maybe it's better to close the door, because I think if you're actually writing what's happening on there, I can't think of anything less comfortable than having sex on a kitchen bench. So maybe it's better. Maybe that's why I normally have like a bed. I want them to be warm, clean.
We're heading off to the UK this year to do some research, and we're going on a canal boat, and we've decided there's going to be something happen on that canal boat.
Oh yeah, that's the perfect place. Yeah.
You'll be rocking
the
the boat. And Jesse's got an interesting question. Do you think love stories always need a conflict to be interesting?
I'll jump
Yes.
in there on that. I think every story needs a conflict to be interesting,
Yeah.
whether it's a love story or, a family drama. Obviously, that's going to have inbuilt conflict, but conflict is really just the kind of engine that drives the story. And if you don't, if everybody's getting on and everybody's happy and having a
Then
great
it's
time,
yeah,
there's not
it's
really
boring.
much of a story.
Yeah.
You want to give them the conflict and have the conflict build, and then it gives you a much better ending, or resolution, because the whole point of the story is really in resolving all that conflict. So for me, it's really conflict is crucial. Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah, conflict or a roadblock.
Yeah.
And it is, and in a romance too, it adds to the sexual tension often between the characters, which is a nice additional element, I suppose. But yeah, absolutely agree.
And another interesting question, Danielle says, what sort of characters do you like your male character? Sorry, what sort of I can't even say the word now.
Characteristics?
Yes, you said it for me. Do you like your male characters to have?
I like them to be real. I don't like billionaires with six packs so much as people who have real faults and real quirks.
And real histories, that they've loathed themselves.
Yes.
But they have to be kind as well.
Yeah, the sense of humour.
Kindness is very important. I also like quirky. I kind of like, them to just be a little bit different, maybe not worry too much about what they look like, what they're wearing. I mean, a couple of my male characters have had very bizarre dress sense, which has been part of the fact that they just don't take themselves too seriously.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's important I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just that often, we might write romantic heroes that are handsome, but often they're handsome in the female protagonist's eyes, for example. So she finds them handsome, but then when it comes down to it, she finds them handsome because of their other characteristics, their personality, and so on. I mean, if somebody sits next to you on the bus and you think, oh, they're a handsome fellow, and then they do the man spread, and then they eat yogurt and listen to music you don't like, they're not so handsome anymore. So I think it is through the eyes of the female protagonist, and that often is, it's around a person. You're not going to be really attracted to somebody, I think, who you don't think is the right person.
And Pen, your kind of heroes are often, maybe a little bit, come across maybe as a little bit surly or difficult perhaps, but like you say, because you're telling the story through the female protagonist's eyes, so a lot of that is in her interpretation too, isn't it, of what she's experiencing,
exactly
that relationship. It depends on the point of view of who's telling the story.
Yeah, and very much so, because my stories are from one point of view, and so it is in the course of the 110,000 words, or normally around there. Then you have to learn the male character's backstory and why he might present like that, and that kind of happens hopefully in the course of the novel. But yeah, there's a reason for that. But I don't know. I just think as readers, we want to like, both protagonists, but then again, the sexual tension and the conflict is really, really important too, because that makes a gripping read, because we know, I guess, and that's quite nice in a romance, they are going to get together in the end. And you often, you think, how can that possibly happen between those two people? And that's the tension, isn't it, in what we write?
And sorry,
I think the most appealing characteristic at the moment for me, writing enemies to lovers, is the man's ability to admit when he's wrong. I find that very attractive.
Totally.
And does anyone have any favourite romance book they'd like to share with us?
I'm a big fan of Outlander and Jamie and Claire. And in fact, at one point, every time Diana Gabaldon brought out a new book, I'd read all of the others again. So I think by the time she brought out the last one, I'd read the first one, I don't know, 8 times or something.
Wow.
I'd read through the whole series again because there were such big gaps in between them. Yeah, that Jamie and Claire, that's that's just such a strong, beautiful relationship. That's probably one of the most romantic relationships in books that I've enjoyed.
I agree with Pamela. I love Emily Henry.
Yeah.
I think she's absolutely brilliant.
I think she's brilliant too. I just think I love the way she's got, I mean, it's centered around the romance, but there's so many other things about characters' backstories and lives that come into it. And there can be some really quite sad, moving moments in her stories, but then you can just be having this laugh out loud moment, you know, a few pages later. And I'm a huge fan of her Book Lovers. That is, I mean, I love all her books, but Book Lovers is my absolute favourite because the snarky protagonist, you know, but who has a really quite poignant backstory that comes out over the course of the story, and a really lovely hero in Charlie, the publisher, and who's running the bookstore in the small town. He's great. So yeah, that's my favourite.
I like I read quite a lot of MM romance. So I love N.R. Walker and her Dearest Milton James. I don't know if anyone's read that, but 2 very quirky main characters. And speaking of quirky, and I just love that book.
Have you read it multiple times, Kirsty?
Yes, I don't know how many, but probably half a dozen.
Yeah. It's very comforting, isn't it?
It's a bit like Pride and Prejudice. When you go, I just want something that's going to do the trick. You just go back to it. Right?
I've read
sorry.
Oh, sorry. Oh no, I was just saying some of the historical fiction. I've read a lot of historical fiction, and even early Julia Quinn. I know she did the Bridgerton and stuff, but she had a lot of kind of romantic comedy elements even in her early historical fiction. I really enjoyed the banter and everything else in those. I thought that was really cleverly done. Jane Austen, of course, Elizabeth Gaskell, like North and South. I mean, I think there are a few really classic, and I kind of love the stitched up stuff that they can't say in some ways in historical fiction. And I think that's something I really unconsciously, but because I read so much historical romance, I guess, when I wasn't actually writing. And I think that does kind of play part in my writing, in my contemporary fiction now, just that the things you can't say and the things you can't do. And I think there's some great romance in historical fiction as well.
As far as category romance, I got to say I'm a big fan of Rachel Bailey's. I love her work and all her characters and the situations she puts them in. They're very well rounded, and it's all very believable and just likable too, as well as lovable. Yeah.
What about you, Jackie? Throwing the question back at you.
I was trying to think that, I'm probably not that much romance, but Sophia Kinsella, I find a lot of her, like the relationships as well.
I was going to mention her too, actually, because I think her early work, and I know there's a shopaholic thing, which she can do it for me, but Can You Keep a Secret? And she had a couple of really, really good early ones, I think, which were, really, and obviously Bridget Jones as well, but it was like that era. So that would have been sort of 80s, early 90s. I think Sophie Kinsella wrote some fabulous books, which are kind of the, very rom-com and kind of early on in the genre, don't you think, Jackie?
Yeah, and I'd also have to mention I interviewed Rachel Johns on Wednesday this week, so a lot of, I really like the romance in her books as well.
Yeah, The Bad Bridesmaid's got some really delicious in it. It's quite cute. The banter.
I'll have to read that one. I loved the last one, the other Bridget. So I'm really looking forward to
I actually think this one is better than the last one. For me, I mean, that's purely subjective, but I think I enjoyed it more. And I have been to Norfolk Island, as Bloke says, we spent a month there one week with the newlyweds and the nearly deads. But yes, it made it probably funnier for me because it's set in Norfolk Island, and
Right.
you know, it is a very quirky, funny little place, and she did that so well. The banter is really quite clever, I thought. Yeah. I thought it was
Right.
better than the Bridget, the other Bridget, for me anyway.
I'll look forward to it.
Yeah.
And anyone have a go-to romance movie they want to share?
Princess Bride.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
lovely.
Good choice.
Best movie of all time.
Yeah.
I like Sweet Home Alabama.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah.
Sweet Home Alabama.
I'm a Bridget Jones tragic, I have to say. I've watched
Have
all
you
of the
seen
movies
the new-
multiple times.
the new
and I
one?
I'm
can't
going on
wait.
Tuesday night.
I'm going next
Yeah,
week
we're going on
too. I
Monday
can't
night.
wait.
Well, just because of that scene, I'm going to say Age of Innocence, because honestly, that scene, when I saw it, it just took my breath away, and it's been branded into my mind ever since. Just amazing. Just so charged and sensual. Oh, just.
So do you have a little pair of gloves that just button up at the wrist?
I used to. And I had another pair. Oh,
I'm trying to think of there's heaps of romance movies I love, but I think Ghost probably would have to be one of my.
Yeah.
Maybe not
Dirty
truly
Dancing.
romance. Yeah, and Dirty Dancing. Yeah, I'm a big Patrick Swayze
Yeah.
fan.
I wasn't bothered about Patrick Swayze, and then I was very much in my 20s, and then I had this vivid long dream, like, you know, those dreams where you think it's like weeks have passed in the dream, and I dreamt that, and I was married at the time, don't tell Mr. Darcy, but and I dreamt I had an affair with Patrick Swayze, and since then, like that, and then after that, it was like a transformation, and I thought, oh, he is very attractive, but I don't think I fancied him before I'd had an affair with him.
All in a dream.
that's so weird. I had a dream that I was in a relationship. I was actually married to Ryan Gosling.
Oh,
It's so funny. I never thought he was attractive. I was going, why do people think he's handsome? He's not
yes, that was me with Patrick.
Great
Yes.
personality, though.
handsome.
Well, thank you so much for joining me for our Valentine's Day date. It's been fun, and I hope those watching had a bit of enjoyment as well. We had some really great questions and great answers.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Tracy.
Thank you.
And thanks to everybody for coming along on Friday night,
Yeah.
Valentine's
Yes.
Day out there,
Yeah, I
listening
know.
to us. Yeah.
And I hope the
Just
rest
adding
of
to
you
the rest of the experience.
what you've got left of Valentine's Day all goes well, and you have some romance. And Sarah's got a bit longer of Valentine's Day
A
left
full
than
day of it. Yeah.
most
Oh,
of us.
enjoy
So,
that, Sarah.
Yeah, before the rest of us can go to bed with a book with any luck.
yeah. Well, thanks everyone. Bye.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Very much.
Great to see you.
Bye.